Say goodbye to 2020 and hello to 2021 with some Texas high school football playoff action. These are the picks. Welcome into the picks presented by Visit Arlington, your guide to Texas high school football weekend. My name is Greg Tepper of Dave Campbell's Texas Football and TexasFootball.com. Thank you so much for tuning in and Happy New Year. Maybe, depending on when you're watching this. Maybe you're watching this in the final hours of this godforsaken year of 2020, or you're watching this in the new hours of the new year 2021, which it's just got to be better, right? It's got to be. There's no way it can be worse, right? Right? Anyway, we are playing football over the New Year's weekend because of the late start of the 6A and 5A, and as a result, here we are into the regional finals of 6A and 5A's Texas high school football playoffs, and there are no slouches left, right? All of these teams are really, really good, and as a result, we should have 16 outstanding regional final matchups. We start in Round Rock. 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon at Reeves Stadium in Round Rock. It's a 6A Division I regional final between the Cibolo Steel Knights and the Austin Westlake Chaparrals. What are the keys to this matchup? Key number one, Westlake's wide receivers against Steele's defensive backs. And this is, to me, where the game is going to be won and lost because this is a real strength for both squads. For Westlake, they have an outstanding group of receivers for Cade Klubnik to throw to, led by the super sophomore Jaden Greathouse and some outstanding playmakers like Luke Nicholas outside. This team is loaded out wide, going up against one of San Antonio's very best secondaries in Cibolo Steel, led by Davion Hook and Cruz Untz. They are going to need to match up with these outstanding wideouts for Westlake and mitigate the damage. In a lot of ways, make them earn every yard. Westlake has made hay this year, hitting deep shot after deep shot. Can Steele keep them in front of them? So, what happens when this Westlake wide receiver core meets one of the best secondaries in the Alamo City? Key number two, Steele on third down. I think that Steele is probably the underdog in this one, or at least let's say Westlake's probably a slight favorite here. And so if Steele's going to pull this off, I think that they need to follow a familiar script for teams that have been able to spring relative upsets, and that is to win on third down on both sides. For Steele, I think they need to go on long, sustained drives, keep this ball away from Westlake's offense, and so that's up to super quarterback Wyatt Beagle and their running game with Josh Farner. Grind it out on third down, get you into 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, and then move the chains. On the other side, they got to get Westlake off the field. They cannot let them churn out these 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 5s. They cannot let them convert more than about 30% of their third downs if they want to win this game. So, when it comes to the key down, can Steele step up? And key number 3, 5-1-2 versus 2-1-0. And now it's time for a segment we like to call Uncomfortable Conversations with Tepper. So, let's talk San Antonio. Let's talk about what happens in 6A when San Antonio meets Austin, because it's not pretty, right? Austin has owned San Antonio in the 6A playoffs. This year, San Antonio teams are 1-6 against Austin teams in the 6A playoffs. That's not enough for you? Well, let's get more uncomfortable. Over the past 5 seasons, San Antonio is 9-30 against Austin teams in the 6A playoffs. Plain and simple, the capital city has dominated the Alamo City. Now, every game is a different matchup, right? And so we can't necessarily look at history and say it's definitely going to repeat itself. But look, plain and simple, can San Antonio finally step up against Austin? Who am I picking? I'm going with Westlake. We didn't even mention, to me, what I think is the strength of this Westlake team, which is on the defensive side. Yeah, the offense with Cade Klubnik and Jaden Greathouse, they get a lot of the attention, but I think that Todd Dodge primarily has an outstanding defense there for the Chaps, and that is going to lead the way. Now, for Cibolo Steel, I think this comes down to being able to run the ball with Josh Farner and getting that offensive line moving, and maybe being +2 or +3 in the turnover margin. But in the end, it's just hard to pick a San Antonio team over an Austin team, plain and simple, because Austin has just had San Antonio's number. I think Westlake moves on to the state semifinals. 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon at Legacy Stadium in Katy. It's a 6A Division II regional final between the Katy Tigers and the Clear Falls Knights. And how about this? Clear Falls, coming into this year, had never won a playoff game. That's right. And now Zach Head's squad are into the regional final. What an unbelievable job they have done. And they can win in a lot of different ways. You go back 2 weeks ago, they won kind of a high-scoring shootout over Westbrook. And then last week, they beat Katy Taylor 10-9. They could win in a lot of different ways, and a lot of it comes back to their outstanding running game led by Quinn Bowen. What do they do when they're up against Katy? Because this Tigers team, I think, is flying under people's radar as much as a Katy team can, and a lot of it has to do with their running game. I think Jalen Davis and Seth Davis have been outstanding, but the balance they have offensively is really impressive. This sophomore quarterback, Chad Koger, I think has really grown up in the role, and he is looking very, very sharp right now. And then, of course, there's the Gary Joseph defense. I mean, that's what Katy does. They have great defense. I think Clear Falls has a great shot if they can get that running game going, but Katy looks like they're too much. I think the Tigers move on to the state semifinal. 11 a.m. Friday morning at Globe Life Park in Arlington. It's the first game of 2021 as Mansfield Summit takes on Red Oak in a regional final in 5A Division I. Two teams that weren't supposed to be here, but kind of for different reasons. You know, Red Oak was a team we had high hopes for, and then the season started and they got absolutely blasted into the sun by Ennis in the first game of the season, and we started having these big questions about whether or not they're going to be able to figure it out. Well, they figured it out, and give a lot of credit to Coach Michael Quintero and company. They have really turned it around, and for all we talk about their quarterback situation, I think it's the running game with Zachary Sanders and their Iverson Young that has really stepped up and guided the way for these Hawks. Going up against Mansfield Summit, who they really shouldn't be here. All right, this is a team that finished 4th in their district, and by the way, depending on who you talk to in that district, they shouldn't be here at all. That wacky DEC rules on a tiebreaker got them into the playoffs. Well, they are making the most of their second life. I think wide receiver Hal Presley has been one of the very best players in the playoffs this season. Got a great connection with quarterback David Hopkins. Remember, this is a rematch of a district game. Red Oak won relatively handily the first time they met. Can they close the gap a little bit? I think this game is closer than the first time, but I do think that Red Oak's defense wins the day. I think the Hawks move on to the state semifinal. And 1 o'clock Thursday afternoon at Anthony Field in Abilene. It's the final game of 2020 as Wichita Falls Rider takes on Lubbock Cooper in a 5A Division II regional final. And speaking of rematches, here's a rematch. And this game was amazing the first time around when they met in district play. If you remember, Wichita Falls Rider went on the road and took a 24-7 lead into the second half before 18 unanswered from Cooper. Storms back to win 25-24, and both these teams have not forgotten that. That was an absolute banger of a game, and I would expect nothing less in this one. Now, look, I think it still comes down to the same kind of matchup, right? This is the Wichita Falls Rider offense with quarterback Jacob Rodriguez against this outstanding Cooper defense led by Kobe McKenzie, who can make those slight adjustments, those small tweaks to put their team over the top. And in the end, I think this game comes down to little things. The game comes down to turnovers, to special teams, things like that. I'll say this. I think it's hard to beat a good team twice. That's why I think I give Rider the edge in the rematch. I think the Raiders move on to the state semifinal. But those are far from the only big games in the regional finals of the 6A and 5A Texas High School football playoffs. Let's get to the lightning round. I think South Lake Carroll squeaks by Euless Trinity. Give me Duncanville over DeSoto in a rematch of a game that never happened, if that makes sense. And I like Galena Park North Shore over Fort Bend Ridge Point. In 6A Division II, I like Denton Geyer over Prosper. Give me Rockwall Heath over Cedar Hill because I'm hopping on the bandwagon. And I like Austin Vandegrift over Buda Hayes. 3 extremely difficult games to call in 5A Division I. I like Cedar Park just barely over Manville. I like Corpus Christi Veterans Memorial just barely over Corpus Christi Flower Bluff. And oh boy, it's Denton Ryan and Highland Park again. I think the Raiders finally get a little bit of revenge. 5A Division II now, I like Aledo over Lovejoy. Give me Crosby to stay hot with a win over Fort Bend Marshall. And you're really going to make me choose between the Slot T and Eddie Lee Marburger? Oh, I'm going to take Liberty Hill over Sherilyn Pioneer. And those are the picks. What am I wrong about? Leave comments down below. Don't forget that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at DCTF. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Dave Campbell. Follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/Dave Campbell. And of course, see us at texasfootball.com, where you can find complete coverage of the 2020-2021 Texas High School football playoffs at texasfootball.com/playoffs. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the regional finals of the Texas High School football playoffs. Be safe, wear a mask. Happy New Year. We'll see you.